So, Hare Krishna, a very warm welcome to all the devotees to our special session. Today, we are doing a book reading session today. Typically, we would do our Srimad Bhagavatam study during this time on Sunday from 5:30 to 7. But today, I decided to do a book reading session from a new book that my dear beloved spiritual master Srila Indradyumna Swami has recently published. The title of this book is Adventures of a Traveling Monk, a Memoir. And I hold this book in front of you. You can see here. So this book is recently published by our Gurudev. The book is all about some of his adventures or some of his life journeys that he has gone through. He is known as traveling monk. He goes to various places within the world. He travels a lot as a monk, and while traveling to various places, he meets various people. He organizes various festivals, organizes various programs, and all class of people he meets during these travels. And while meeting with them, he gets to know about them. He gets to have various very varied kind of experiences. Some are very adventurous, and as you will see from the lesson, from the chapter that we are going to read today. And in particular, when he meet these people and have those kind of very adventures, he looks at those adventures, he look at those instances in a very devotional way, in a very spiritual way, through the lens of the Shastra, Vedic Shastra, and he pens them down, he jots them down, all those experiences in the form of a book, which is popularly known as the diaries. He writes these diaries, and this book is actually a compilation of some of the selected chapters from his diaries. That's what we are going to discuss today. So that is what. Why I decided to do a book reading session today? Because I wanted to have a short break. I wanted to have some time because I wanted to prepare some quiz for you to augment your learning in the Srimad Bhagavatam study course. So since I don't get a lot of time during the weekend because of my office hours, I needed one weekend to prepare that quiz. So I thought that let us not waste this opportunity to discuss something spiritual, but while I don't spend a lot of time preparing for the class. So that is why we are doing this book reading session. So we will start normally with our Mangalacharan prayers. So anybody from the class would like to volunteer for the Mangalacharan prayers without looking who has memorized these Mangalacharan prayers? Can somebody recite them?
Prabhuji can try.
Okay, please go ahead, Prabhuji.
Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam साद्वैतम सावधूतम परिजन सहितम कृष्ण चैतन्य देवम श्री राधा कृष्ण पादानुसहगण रघुनाथान्वितांश हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे.
Excellent, Prabhuji. Very nice recitation. I think one place you made a little mistake, but that is acceptable. But most of the prayers that you recited. That was quite good. Very nice. Very fluent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are all set for this special session of book reading. One of the very first chapter from this book we are going to read. So what I have done is I have taken the book, I have used my mobile phone and scanned all the pages of the first chapter and have arranged them in a slide. Together with the chapter, I have also organized a small photograph of our Gurudev just to remind ourselves and just to have the constant darshan of uh, Gurudev's darshan. His pure form really inspires me and probably would inspire others also. So this is how the slide looks like. I'll show you. I hope you can see the slide now. Okay. So on the right side, you see the diary, the page from the book, and on left side, you see the photograph of our Gurudev. So I have used different photographs. So what I would like now is maybe invite few devotees who would do the reading. Probably let me pick one or two devotees for the class today. I will pick first of all Jaimala Mataji. Would you be willing to read the chapter?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So one will be Jaimala Mataji. Then I would also request Rakesh ji. Would you like to read?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So we have Jaimala Mataji and Rakesh ji. And I would like to give the opportunity to one more devotee. Maybe Manish Prabhu, would you like to read?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay.
Very much.
So please make sure that you have a good internet connection. You are near the modem or the internet, because the quality of reading should be good so that other devotees can also understand it. Sometimes the internet connection quality is not good, so the voice generally is not clear. So I think all three of you have a good internet connection, as I could understand from the quality of voice. Now we will also do one more thing. Reading of a book is generally a good exercise, but sometimes when we read in a group, reading sometimes can be a little monotonous. So what we will do is, once we complete reading of one page, I will try to summarize the bullet points that are there in that page, so that in case somebody could not keep a track of or could not understand some paragraph or something, when I summarize it, he's actually able to grasp the message from that page. So we will take small 2-minute or 1-minute pauses after we finish one page. So for this very first page, since the content is very little, I will not do it for this page, but starting from the second page, I will take a brief pause after each page. So we start this discussion and we go to Jaimala Mataji to read first 6 pages. Okay, Mataji, over to you.
First chapter, USA, Finding My Spiritual Master, a story of 2 lives. The life I was saved from. This is the story of my life. Or better yet, the story of 2 lives. The one my spiritual master saved me from, and the one he gave me. Both concern the same person, but one life was transient and full of confusion, while the other is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss. This is the story of a miracle, for me at least. It is the story of how I was given a life of service and joy. You could say my story begins with my birth, but I now know it goes back many lifetimes to a past too distant for me to know or understand. If cameras had existed that long ago, I imagine we would see on these pages photos of kings and paupers, animals and humans, the famous and the infamous, all being born, dying, and then being born again. But
Yes,
this
Mataji.
chapter of my story begins, like all life stories, from the day I was delivered anew into a new life with a new family. I was born in Palo Alto, California, into an affluent and somewhat unusual family, or at least the generation before my parents was unusual. My paternal grandfather, bent on seeking adventure and escaping a life in the American suburbs, left for Tahiti on a sailing ship before my father was born. The man I thought of as my grandfather was my grandmother's fifth husband, and he made millions of dollars from inventing the floating lids used on petroleum tanks. My grandfather was generous with his money and supplemented the income my father made in advertising. Although we never wanted for anything, I found out quickly how tough life could be. At the age of 4, I contracted spinal meningitis. I remember seeing my mother cry when they told her what I had. All I knew was a raging fever and lonely months in the hospital as the doctors tried to save my life. I remember once hearing nurses whispering about my inevitable death. Anxious for shelter, I wondered, where is my mother? Why can't she help me? After some months, the medicines proved effective. I left the hospital a little wiser. I was only 4, but I knew more about what to expect. Life wasn't going to be a fairy tale. When I was 6, old Yeller died. He was the neighborhood hound, the best friend of all the boys on the block, and our constant companion until the day he crossed the road a little late. The car that hit him didn't even stop. Some of the boys ran after it, throwing rocks. The rest of us cried at Old Yeller's side as we watched his life ebb away. We pleaded with Mr. Franklin, who came by in his ice cream truck to save Old Yeller. He just stood motionless because it was too late. Again, the thought came to my mind, who can we turn to for help?
Hmm. So now I will take a little pause just to summarize this particular page and the previous page, what we have just read. Jamala Mataji read it very nicely with a very decent speed and every pronouncing word very clearly. Thank you, Mataji. So Gurudev, his name before he came to ISKCON was Brian Tibbits. So I will refer to him at the moment as Brian. So this is a story which Brian is narrating before he came to Krishna consciousness, what the life was. So he mentions that he was born in a very affluent family. His grandfather was an inventor. He invented something for the petroleum industry and for which he made a lot of money. His father also inherited that wealth from his grandfather and also supplemented that wealth by his own income as an advertiser. Then Srila Gurudev describes that his life, his experience of life has been very, very tough, right from the moment he took birth, or maybe few years after he took birth. Specifically, he is mentioning about a deadly disease, spinal meningitis, he acquired at the age of maybe 4, and but ultimately he got cured. The medicine worked on him, and then he gives a second experience that life was very tough when he saw that a neighborhood dog, which they loved a lot, died when a truck hit that dog. And these people could not understand what really happened. They really loved this dog, and all of a sudden he's died. So, whom we can turn for help in such situations? So that is what he's mentioning in this first page. Okay, now we continue our discussion. We go to the next page. Mataji, please continue.
As I grew, the school seemed irrelevant and I became disillusioned quickly. Even as a young child, I was aware that death, sadness, and conflict marred the shiny, affluent world in which we lived. When I visited my friends' houses, I noticed that their parents were always fighting. My mother's best friend took matters into her own hands. She left her unhappy marriage and her children behind to pursue a new life with her lover. At school, boys would get into fist fights over girls. The day my mother's father died,
Hare Krishna Mataji, we lost your voice.
yes, Prabhuji. Just a moment. I watched her crumble and didn't know what to do. Once there was a suicide in our neighborhood. People all around me were suffering, but nobody seemed to want to or be able to address it. There was no talk of spirituality or God in my family home. My parents, both Stanford graduates, were not inclined towards religion. They spent their time painting, reading philosophy, poetry, pulp fiction, and scientific publications, and arguing with each other. My best friend was a Mormon, and one day he and his family invited me to their church. But I didn't trust the priest, and I didn't like the dark environment. None of it made any sense because everyone told me that life was supposed to be happy. I went to my grandfather for help. Grandpa, isn't there something more than all this? I asked as I gestured to his mansion. We were sitting on the back porch overlooking his expansive garden. Sure, there is, Brian, he said. Do your mom and dad not talk to you about heaven? Never, I answered. Well, there is a heaven, and if you live a good life, you can go there when you die. But what is heaven like? I asked.
Nice, interesting. Huh? So you can see that now in this page, what we read was the discussion continues further. Srila Gurudev or Brian right now mentioned in the previous page that he started looking at life at very tough. And then in this page, that experience continues to grow further. He's mentioning about that he witnessed divorce. Then he also witnessed that there were boys in the school who were fighting over girls. He also witnessed suicide. So he's giving some examples from his life where he noticed that life was not that beautiful. There were a lot of painful instances in life: death, suicide, divorce, etc. Then he gives a little explanation about the nature of family he was living with. He said that it was not it was an atheistic family. There was no discussion about God, etc. No interest in religion. And then all this did not made any sense to Brian. He always thought that life, how can life be so sad? So which made him go to his grandfather and ask, is it something more to this life? Is it all that it is all about? And then his grandpa gives him some idea of heavens, that beyond this world, maybe there is some existence called heaven. And then the discussion continues further. So let us move to the next page. Yes, Madhu.
Heaven, he said, is a place where all the girls stay beautiful forever, and you can smoke cigars and drink as much as you want. I'm sure, I sure am looking forward to going there. My grandfather died shortly after this conversation, and though I was sad, I was also happy for him because he had told me where he was going and that he wanted to go there. Somehow, leaving behind the confusion of the world to go to a better place seemed like a good deal. Not only people, but animals too were suffering. I was always very affected when I saw dead animals on the side of the road. When I was 12 years old, my teacher asked us to draw what we would like to see on the table at the upcoming Thanksgiving feast. I drew vegetables, not turkey or meat. My classmates saw it as hilarious. My teachers thought it odd. My father initially registered my interest in vegetarianism. The day I refused to eat meat, he figured I was downright impolite and sent me to bed without supper. But later, some people moved into our neighborhood who were keen on healthy living. They exercised a lot, ate yogurt, and practiced a vegetarian diet. My father got to know them and became a vegetarian himself. At 15, I was not a strict vegetarian. My father organized a visit to a slaughterhouse. When I saw the workers shooting cows and cutting their throats, I vomited and became a committed vegetarian on the spot. My father was concerned about me. Some weeks after my unpleasant experience at the slaughterhouse, he pulled me aside for a quiet word. I'm worried about you, Brian, he said. You don't seem to be interested in anything. What do you want to do when you finish school? I just don't know, Dad. Okay, son, he said, you need to find something, a hobby or a passion of some sort. I think you should try some kind of sport.
Hmm. So now we summarize this page. So we saw that in the previous page, the discussion ended that Brian is discussing about heavens. His grandfather is telling him about heavens. So he started to understand more about heavens, and when his grandfather dies, he's happy in one sense because he thought that he has gone probably to a better place where there is not much suffering like I see in this world. Then the discussion changes a little bit in the chapter. Uh, Brian now talks about, or Gurudev now talks about, the suffering of animals. And because he see the suffering of animals, that inspired him to take to vegetarianism, which was kind of seen by his family, his father, something very awkward. Uh, Although he was not very strict vegetarian, but when he visited this slaughterhouse, he became a very strict vegetarian. And then that made his father worried, and then the discussion between his father and Brian started. His father is recommending Brian now to take to some hobby like sports, etc. So now we see how Brian's life shapes further.
What am I going to do is write a list of sports and you can choose which you would like to do. I closed my eyes and put my finger on the list he wrote. It landed on swimming. But my freshman year of high school, I was captain of the swim team and on track for the Olympics. In my senior year, I followed the new fashion and grew my hair long. I refused to cut it when my coach demanded it and he kicked me off the team. I started swimming elsewhere. I surfed the waves at Stinson Beach, just north of San Francisco, with my friends. Out there, I felt I was coming close to something satisfying. We were free and moving and in touch with something bigger than ourselves. But always at the back of my mind, there was an awareness of my vulnerability. What if something goes wrong out here? Is anyone looking after me? The summer that summer we packed up our gear and headed south to Mexico in search of the perfect wave. At San Blas, we were thrilled when we caught waves that gave rides more than a kilometer long. But the real challenge was around the point at Rogers Bay. There, the waves broke in perfect formation. The curl was flawless. You could ride through the tube. But there was one problem. The waves broke in onto a coral reef. I really I don't really know what compelled me to paddle towards the reef that day. Some boys challenged me, others pleaded me not to go. Perhaps I was desperate. I caught the wave with ease. It was big, beautiful, and long. I quickly turned left, crouched, and suddenly found myself racing into the tube. I was thrilled, exhilarated. This was it. But in my excitement, I lost my concentration and slipped right into the deadly reef. I remember screaming for help as the coral tore into my skin. Again, the same thought returned. Who can help me now? I rolled and tumbled across the rocks and landed close to the beach. Some villagers came and pulled me out. I was fortunate, except for a
Okay. So this is now the page number 5. So when the discussion between his father and Brian, where father is saying that, okay, you should try some sports. So Brian agreed to it, and his father made a list, and Brian closed his eyes and put his finger somewhere, and the finger was in front of swimming. So he started to take swimming, but somehow because of his long hair, his coach kicked him out from that swimming team. But he still continued with swimming, but in a different way. He started exploring waves or surfing. So you might have seen in the advertisements where there's a small piece of wood on which the sailor or the surfers would surf on the waves of the ocean. So Brian used to like that a lot, surfing on the waves of the ocean. And then one fine day, while he was surfing on the waves, he met an accident where he crashed into some rocks and got injured also. Some villagers helped him out. So that was his experience of surfing. Let us see what happens next. Okay. Mataji, please.
I was fortunate except for a large gash on my left leg. I had mostly minor cuts and bruises, but my surfboard was finished, and so was my search for the perfect wave. Back in the States, I reflected that though I couldn't save myself, maybe I could save others. In January of 1968, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, America's top fighting unit, alongside 8 of my closest friends. We had been all the way through school together. had played football and were on the same swim team in high school. All of us wanted to help our country by stopping the spread of communism in Vietnam, and what better way to do it than to fight as a team of brothers? We knew each other through and through, and we knew we could make a difference together. I thought if we could win in Vietnam, perhaps we could bring peace and happiness to the world. My unit shipped out of Vietnam in early summer of 1968, but I was ordered to stay back for advanced weaponry training in underwater demolition. A few weeks later, in the middle of training, I was pulled aside by my senior officer and told to go immediately to see the commanding officer, a serious looking man in his 60s. He directed me to a chair in front of his imposing desk. Lance Corporal Tibbits, thank you for coming in, he said. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your platoon came under heavy artillery and rocket fire during combat, and all the members of your platoon were killed. I'm sorry. We are going to give you some time off training. I didn't know whether to turn right or left when I stumbled out of the Marines training facilities. My life, as I knew it, was over. I ended up living with 6 friends in a rented house in Kentfield, California. One evening, the phone rang. I will get it, said Johnny in a resigned voice. He put his beer down and dragged himself off the sofa and into the kitchen. The damn phone rings all day long, and it's never for me.
Okay, so we saw in the previous page that Brian developed some passion for surfing, but one fine day while surfing, he crashed into rocks. His surfing board was crushed, and his enthusiasm for surfing also ended there, then and there. And then the next chapter in his life starts where Brian joins the army in USA. Along with Brian, there were many of his friends, and it so happened that there was Vietnam War going on where they were fighting against communist regime. So his friends also went to fight for the Vietnam War, but somehow Brian could not join them because he was going for some army training, some advanced training. But later on, he came to know through his officer that all his friends that joined Vietnam War died because they came under some rocket fire. And that because of this, the army chief, his boss, gave him some time off from the duty. He was asked to leave and take some leave, some rest. So Brian, when he came out from the army chief's office, he joined his friends who had rented an apartment. And one fine day, a phone rings when he's living in the same apartment. So let us see what goes now. Now we are on page number 7, and I would like to invite Rakesh Prabhu to continue with the reading further, and would like to thank Jamala Mataji for very nice reading. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure enough, it is for you, Brian. He called to me. Who is it? No, I did not ask, Johnny said. But the guy sounds official. Thanks, ma'am, I said, taking the receiver from him. Into the phone, I said, hello, this is Brian. Can I help you? Is this Lance Corporal Tibbits? Asked a commanding voice. I immediately realized it was a Marine Corps official. Sir, yes, sir, it is me. The captain of the local duty station is requesting that you come to see him at 0800 tomorrow morning, he said. What is it about? I asked. That is classified, soldier. Sure, okay. I said I will be there. It had been nearly 3 months since I had been asked to take leave. A few weeks earlier, I had been to a 3-hour review at the naval base. Though the official would not tell me over the phone, I suspected that I was being called in to resume services. I had been in the reserves since taking leave and had attended compulsory training one weekend per month ever since my friends had been killed. I was trying to hold myself together. It wasn't easy, but I thought I would done a pretty good job of not letting it show. The next morning, I arrived in full uniform at the Marine Corps Center on Madison Avenue in San Rafael. Once more, I found myself standing in front of a large shiny desk before a solemn older man in uniform, his chest adorned with medals. I have the report of your meeting with the naval doctors last week in Oakland, he said. Son, on the advice of those physicians, we are discharging you from the corps effectively immediately. An honorable discharge.
So the phone that rang in the previous page, when we finished reading the previous page, this phone had actually come from the Marine Corps office, the Army headquarters. And it was mainly for Brian Tibbits, who was in that Marine Corps. So the discussion went like this, that they called him to come to the office because they had some discussion to do. So Brian thought that maybe it was because that they want him to resume duty, take the duty, come back to the duty. But it was something like a surprise for him when the officer told him that we are relieving you from your duties because it is mentioned by doctors that you are not actually fit for duty. So let us see what goes further. Yes.
I felt my stomach drop, but why? I blurted out. I thought I was on my way to Vietnam. The doctors have determined that the death of your high school friends has had a major effect on you. The captain said, we don't deem you fit for combat. But I am over it, I said in a bigger voice. I am ready to go. Not according to what I have here in front of me, he said, tapping the pages on his desk. Your father is deceased. Yes, sir. Last year. It was sudden. It says here he was on the aircraft carrier USS Cabot in World War II in the South Pacific. Says that he was injured and that he received a Purple Heart. Yes, sir, I said, surprised. He saw action there. It was his dying wish that I join the armed forces. Has your mother remarried? The captain asked. No, sir. Are you helping her out financially? Yes, sir, I am. Son, we have taken all that into consideration. Your discharge papers will be mailed to you within a week. But, sir, that will be all, soldier. But I am not a soldier anymore, I said, standing up. You gave a good year to your country, he said. You can be proud of that. When I got back to the house, I shared the news with my friends. They all jumped up and down for joy, but I was despondent. Come on, man, Steve said. Be happy. You know how many guys wish they would they could get out of going to the war in Vietnam.
Now, as you can see in the previous page, Brian was told that he is no longer required in the army. The reason given was that they felt that he is very much shocked by his friend's death in the Vietnam War. He said that no, actually I have recovered from it. I am no longer shocked. But then they also said that your mother is living alone. Your father has already died. So you are the financial support of the family. So we have considered all these reasons. So that is why we have we are requesting you to leave the army. We no longer need you in the army. Now, when Brian goes back to his friends, where he has rented the apartment together with his friends, the friends are very joyful to hear this news, but Brian was not. Brian was still despondent. So let us see the reason for despondence of Brian. Let us see in the next page. Okay.
You know my story, Steve, I said. Harvey, Jerry, Paul, and all the others died in combat while I was stateside. They are going, and I am still here. I don't feel good about that. The mood in the room changed abruptly. Craig, the most spiritually minded of my friends, looked concerned at my words. He was like a big brother to me, tall, freckled, and with a full head of red hair. He stood out in a crowd. He had done well in school until the drug culture hit and he had started missing classes. Intelligent and inquisitive by nature, he had recently started showing an interest in Indian philosophy. Everyone has their karma. Brian, he said, try not to feel guilty. Karma is a law of nature. What you do, good or bad, comes back to you. It wasn't your time to die then, and it is not your time now either. Searching for meaning. With my time in the Marines behind me, I gradually found myself on a personal quest for answers, a spiritual journey. I had left behind the disciplined life of a soldier and was wandering in a searching of meaning. One day, I took a walk to try to clear my head. I went into the church on the corner of my street and sat awkwardly in the pews with folded hands. I cannot remember ever having come into a church. I said out loud. I wasn't sure who to talk to, so I directed my words towards the cross on my altar. My parents were not religious, and I guess neither am I. But what can I say, God? I am struggling with a few issues, and honestly, I do not know who to turn to. If you are there, if you are real, can you give me a sign, some direction? It was quiet in the church. I sat a few minutes, and when nothing happened, I stood up and left, grabbing a free copy of Bible from the Bibles kept at the entrance on my way out.
So he was not feeling very good. Why? When Brian returned back from the Marine Corps, his friends were very joyous, but Brian was not. So the reason was that he felt separation from his friends, that they died, but I did not. So he felt very bad about it. And this thing was noticed by one of his friends who was very spiritually minded. His name is Craig. And Craig said that the reason is mainly because of karma. So Brian hears about this theory of karma or law of karma for the first time in his life. So Craig explains that it was their karma to die, and it was your karma that you will not die, or you did not die in that event. So that is will explain. Now Brian heard about it. Then the chapter starts discussing about how Brian started searching for meaning, because this event of passing away of his friends in the Vietnam War left a very very deep mark on his heart. He was looking for answers, and while looking for answers, he goes to a church one day, and he starts to direct his prayer toward the cross that is there in front of the church, and he's asking, what is going on? Why I am like this? Why this is happening to me? And then can you tell me uh, uh, where to find these answers, where I want to understand, where I want to learn all these things? How can I find answers to all these questions? So he sat there in the church looking for some indication, some sign that might come uh, while doing this prayer. But when nothing came out, he went out, taking a copy of Bible in his hands, and then coming out from the church. We do the next page number 10. Yes, Prabhu.
A few weeks later, I wandered into a local alternative bookstore. Browsing through the section of Eastern philosophy, I picked out a book I thought might help. It was called The Tibetan Book of the Dead. I stopped in a park on the way back to the house and read the first few chapters. I was confronted by a concept totally foreign to me, the theory of reincarnation, the idea that there was life after death. It helps a little if you believe in reincarnation, I guess. I thought, if it is true, it means the guys are probably doing okay somewhere else. When I got back to the house later that afternoon, Craig was sitting on a couch. He could see I was upset even without me saying a word. Hey Brian, he said, how about we sit and have a talk? How are you? I just don't know where to turn from here, I confessed. I think you should look to the east, he said, like India. The Beatles went there. They stayed in an ashram for a few weeks. Look, yesterday I was in San Francisco in the Haight Ashbury visiting some friends. Someone gave me an invitation to a big event that is happening tomorrow in Golden Gate Park. Yeah, what kind of event? It is a big parade with a gigantic chariot from India, he said. A spiritual gathering. People dress up like in India. They are gonna sing songs and burn incense. Stuff like that. It is the talk of Haight Ashbury. All the hippies in San Francisco are going. What is it all about? I am not completely sure, Craig said, but there is going to be a vegetarian feast at the end, so I am going. You wanna come with me? It is free. I guess so, I said. I don't really feel like going to a big celebration, but I guess I will go if you are going.
Yeah. So we left in the previous page where Brian is sitting in the church praying for some direction from the Lord, that if he can guide to find where to go to find the answers. And then he comes out from the church, picks up the copy of Bible. After he comes out from the church, after a few days, he goes to another bookstore and picks one copy of another book by the name The Tibetan Book of the Dead. So while reading that book, he comes to a concept of, come to know the concept of the reincarnation, Punarjanma. And he kind of deliberates upon, meditates upon that concept and finds it interesting and somewhat logical. And he thinks that maybe that is the answer, that if reincarnation is really true, then his friends who died in the Vietnam War probably got they are doing good maybe in their next life. So then Craig gives him another advice. Craig advises him that if you are really looking for some questions about life, then why not better look towards the east, specifically India. And then he gives him some information about the festival, which is like a Rath Yatra festival that is going to be organized in a nearby town, in a nearby place, which will have a vegetarian feast, and there will be a big celebration. So why not you also come and join? Probably you find some answers to life question which you are seeking. So that's how the discussion is going on. Let us see what happens, whether he is able to make to that Rath Yatra festival or not. So, Prabhu, please read.
Hey, but it is not just a celebration, Craig said. Maybe you can find the answers you are looking for. Yeah, sure. Okay, I said. Where shall I meet you? I will meet you at the event, Craig replied. Just drive over Golden Gate Bridge and take the second exit into the park. We can meet at noon next to the big chariot. The next morning, I got up late and rushed through the traffic towards Golden Gate Bridge, which was an hour from where we lived. There was a long line of stationary cars backed up for at least a kilometer at the toll gate. Reports are just coming coming in of a bad accident on Golden Gate Bridge. The newsreader announced on the radio. The California Highway Patrol says to expect a delay of several hours. I gave up after 2 hours. Must be my karma, I thought, remembering Craig's explanation for unfortunate reversals. The next day, Craig came bursting into the kitchen where I was having breakfast. Hey, Brian, he said, what happened, man? I looked for you everywhere at the parrot yesterday. Sorry, I said. There was an accident on the bridge. I waited for hours and just gave up. Man, you really missed out, Craig said. It was far out. There were literally thousands of people. The chariot was huge. We all pulled it through the park on ropes for 3 miles down to the beach. Then we had a feast of rice pudding, fruit salad, and sugar balls. The food was so delicious. But you know what impressed me the most? What? The Guru. He is the spiritual teacher of the people who organized the event. He is from India. He rode on the chariot with statues of their gods. His speech was super cool. He began by telling us he was going to sing a song by an incarnation of God who lived 500 years ago. At the end, he encouraged us to sing, dance, and eat the food.
So in this page, we left in the previous page where Brian is getting an invitation from Craig to go to the Festival of Chariots, the Rath Yatra, going to be organized in the nearby locality. But Brian agreed to it, and he also made an effort to go to that festival. But somehow, because of very heavy traffic, there was some accident on the path, and there was a lot of traffic. And the forecast was that maybe the traffic is not going to get over after several hours. So after 2 hours of being stuck in the traffic, Brian gives up. Then the next day, Craig complains to Brian that you did not come. We decided, we agreed. Then Brian gives him the reason that he could not come because of the very heavy traffic. Then Craig appreciates the event. The food was very good, very tasty. But he specifically points out that besides food and a great event, he was really particularly impressed with the Guru. And actually, he's talking about Srila Prabhupada here, the ISKCON founder Acharya. And his speech was very good, and so on and so forth. So let us see what goes further. Yes, Prabhu.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. Yes, but listen to this. Craig continued. I was thinking of you as he spoke. Everything he said seemed to resonate with what I know about you. I mean, he was talking about finding the answers to the questions of life and how we are struggling in this world, but that there is spiritual way out. Stuff like that. And when he said his practice includes singing and dancing, I thought, yeah, that is Brian when he is doing good because you like to sing and dance. And you know what? What? I am convinced he is your guru. I mean, seriously, man. One day you are gonna be his student. No way, Craig, I said. I am not even looking for a guru. I get it. But if you ever do want a guru, he will be your guru. Believe me. I am gone. Write down his name for you. Tearing off a piece of newspaper that was lying on the couch, he wrote down each letter of the Guru's name and handed it to me. They call him Srila Prabhupada, he said. I took the scrap of paper and crammed it into a pocket in my jeans. That night before going to sleep, I emptied out my pockets onto my bed and found the piece of paper. I stuffed it into the cover of my Then Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band record album by the Beatles. For a few weeks, I mused over Craig's advice that I look to the east for the answer as to why my friends died in the war and I didn't. My discharge from the Marine Corps, though honorable, weighed heavily on my mind. I finally decided to leave the house I was living in with my friends, leave California, and leave the United States of America, henceforth the US altogether. For now, I thought I will go to Europe and experience different countries and different cultures. I will meet all kinds of people. Maybe I will find some answers to my questions.
So you see how Brian journey of quest, seeking for life's questions, answers to the life's question is continue to grow. His discussion with Craig continues. Craig is appreciating the Guru he saw in the Rath Yatra festival. And in the discussion, it so happens that Craig makes a forecast. If he starts to make a future telling, he's saying that to Brian that mark my words, this person is going to be your Guru. Brian says that I am not even looking for a Guru. And so how can you say that? But Craig then says that even in future, if you look for some Guru, then please look for this Guru. He seems to be very genuine. And then what does Craig do? He writes the name of Srila Prabhupada on a piece of newspaper and then gives him to Brian. Brian stuck that paper in his jeans, and when Brian goes back to home, he empties his pocket. That paper also comes out, but he doesn't throw the paper. He keeps the paper and very nicely he keeps it in the record album. So he had a lot of record albums. He stuck it there in the record album and like that. And then Brian now decides to explore various countries, various cultures in Europe. Probably by doing so, he thinks that he may be able to find answers to life questions that he's having. Let us see what happens when he goes to Europe. Now, I will request Manish ji to please do the reading. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Rakesh. Very nice reading.
Yes, Prabhu. In September 1969, I boarded a flight for Europe with a friend. We visited England, Denmark, France, Germany, and Greece. While we were in Germany, I met Eileen, an American girl who was also traveling and searching. She joined us as we traveled farther to Turkey, Egypt, and Lebanon. We were thinking of going on to India when unforeseen circumstances forced me to return to the US. Back in America, Elena and I got married in a small backyard ceremony at our friend's house. I wore jeans and she wore a sundress, and we all ate ice cream for our wedding breakfast. Together, we started to follow Craig's advice in earnest by attending lectures of various yogis and spiritual teachers, most of whom had traveled from India with their teachings. We weren't overly impressed with any of them. Many of them had acquired wealthy followers and were embracing the materialistic lifestyle of America. While continuing to talk about spirituality, I sensed a lack of genuineness in most of those I met. Helen was intellectually brilliant and she went back to the university soon after we got married. While she was studying, I earned a little money to support us by making cement bird baths for $3 an hour. Then in December 1970, Ellen was accepted to study at the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. I found a job doing gardening on campus. The life I was given. One afternoon, when I had finished my gardening duties, I wandered into a museum on the University of Michigan campus, hoping to forget my troubles by browsing through antiquities. An exhibit on India's culture and traditions caught my eye. As I surveyed the paintings and artifacts, my eyes fell upon a beautiful painting called Krishna and his milkmaids. The scene captivated my attention.
Now, now Brian decided to go to Europe, explore various cultures so that he can find answers to the life questions. So he goes to the travel, and in the travel he finds one lady by the name Eileen. She's an American girl, Somehow it turns out that this Eileen was Brian's wife. They get married in a small ceremony. And then he recalled that his friend Craig had advised him to uh, look forward to East to find the answers to life questions. So Brian and maybe Eileen also started to attend the lectures of various spiritual teachers who had actually come to America from India only. But Brian noticed that they did not seem to be very genuine. They had, although they seemed to be spiritual, but they had accepted all kind of materialistic way of life while being spiritualist, while posing as a spiritualist. So he was not very much satisfied. He was not very much attracted to them. But then so happened that his wife Eileen went for university for some studies. Brian found a gardening job in the same university. And now the chapter starts to discuss about the life I was given. Now the chapter starts to discuss how he actually came into contact with Krishna consciousness. So here he says that one fine day he was going to a museum in the university where he found a painting which was titled as Krishna and his milkmaids. So that was very captivating for Brian. And let us see what was Brian's experience watching this painting.
Yeah, I moved closer to read the text that went with it. The scene depicts heaven where God enjoys eternal life. Yes, I thought that's what I am looking for, eternal life, a place beyond the highs and lows of the world. But could it be like this? Who is Krishna? And what is milkmaid anyway? I looked around for someone to explain the painting in more depth, but a guard announced that the museum was about to close. Disappointed, I walked out of the main entrance, and there on the lawn before me were orange-robed monks singing and dancing with large staffs in their hands. A group of about 200 students had gathered around them. When the singing stopped, one of the monks stepped forward to speak, and unbelievably, he started speaking about the person in the painting I had just seen, Krishna. Thank you for listening, he said in a clear voice. This chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is a transcendental sound vibration coming down from the spiritual world. The students started drifting away after a few minutes, only a few remained, but I stood dumbfounded by the whole experience, captivated by the young monk's presence and by the atmosphere they had created. Another monk who came over to me, my name is Vishnujana Swami, he said. What's yours? Brian, I replied and added, tell me more about what are you doing? Tell me about Krishna. Okay, but first let me tell you about my guru, he said. One can only understand Krishna by the mercy of the spiritual master. Who is your guru? I asked. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. He is affectionately known by his students as Srila Prabhupada, he replied. The name was familiar, but I couldn't figure out why. My guru, Srila Prabhupada, he said, is a genuine sadhu, a genuine spiritual teacher. I know this because he has full control.
So Brian, when he comes out from that museum, in the museum, he sees this painting, Krishna and his milkmaid. So milkmaid actually refers here to the gopis. So he was quite curious to see that painting. That painting captivated Brian's attention. And interestingly, what happens is that when he comes out from the museum, he finds that there is a group of people. And then some 200 students had gathered around some monks. And these monks are speaking something, they are singing some kirtan. And Brian becomes very curious to see what's going on. And the monk is speaking some philosophy, explaining about Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And then soon he found that many students who were gathered there started to leave, but Brian found the whole experience very, very captivating. And he stays back and has some interaction with the chief monk that was there. His name was Vishnujana Swami. They exchange introductions together. Brian introduces to Vishnujana Swami. And then in the discussion comes out some discussion about the guru, the teacher from whom Vishnujana Swami is learning all these spiritual subject matter. And it is mentioned the name His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And then he learns about Prabhupada from Vishnujan Swami. Let us see what more he learns about Prabhupada from Vishnujan.
Yeah. So he has a self-control of mind and senses. Yeah. What I mean is he thinks about God. He talks about God and all his actions are dedicated to God. And he is not making anything up or inventing anything to serve his own ego or senses. He comes in a line of disciple succession. What does that mean? I asked. It means that Guru has his own Guru and his Guru has a Guru. And that line of teachers and students extends all the way back through the history to Krishna. The philosophy of Prabhupada teaches comes from the Vedas, the ancient scriptures of India, and the most important text from where the literature is the Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Krishna himself. No one can find fault with Prabhupada. He is someone who loves Krishna. He actually loves God and has dedicated his whole life to him. 5 years ago, he came to America by ship because he wanted to teach Americans how to love God too. He came on a ship like a yacht. I asked, recalling the wealthy Indian gurus I had met. No. On a freight ship, Vishnujana Swami replied, and he came with just a few dollars in his pocket and a trunk of books he had written. He came because his spiritual master asked him to come way back in the 1930s and because he felt compassion for others. Tell me, did you ever feel like it was wrong that life in this world is temporary or that people suffer? Yes, I confirmed. Right, and it is wrong because we are spiritual souls and we are by nature eternal and full of bliss and wisdom. No one wants to die. No one wants to die. Everyone wants to live, even a cockroach. I saw one the other day running around trying to get away. Everyone wants to live and everyone wants to be healthy. That's why we spend millions of dollars on hospitals every year, and naturally, nobody wants to be.
So the discussion between Vishnujan Swami and Brian is now growing up. Vishnujan Swami tells him that his guru is actually in a disciplic succession in parampara. What does it mean? Because my guru has learned from his guru has learned from his guru, and this disciplic succession goes all the way back to Krishna. So whatever spiritual knowledge they are receiving through disciplic succession is actually very pure, without any adulteration. Then Brian learns how Prabhupada, his guru, Vishnujan Swami's guru, came to America. He understood that he had come on a very a very non-opulent kind of ship, a freight ship, not on yacht, which was used by other spiritual teachers which Brian had come in contact with. So then he developed some understanding of Vedic philosophy. So Brian is looking for some questions, life questions, answer to life questions. And somehow when he starts to hear about Vedic philosophy, Vishnujan tells him that this world is place of misery. And Brian actually agrees to it. That was the Brian realization also. And now the philosophy starts to appeal to Brian, and he says that everyone wants to live, nobody wants to die, but they are forced to die. So that means something is abnormal in this world. And like this, the philosophical discussion between Vishnujan and Brian continues. Let us see how it progresses.
Yeah. So this is miserable, and we want to enjoy ourselves. We want to be eternal and full of knowledge. But we left the spiritual world where everything is eternal and joyful to come here to the material world to try to enjoy ourselves separately from the divine. And the paradox is that more we try to enjoy and become masters of the world around us, the more we suffer. Why is that? It's because we have forgotten our eternal spirituality identity as servants of God. We might think that being a servant sounds dull and demeaning, but we are tiny spiritual beings and God is the greatest spiritual being. So it is natural for us to serve Him. The first teaching of yoga is that this body is only a vehicle. It's not really us. I am not black or white, pretty or ugly, man or woman, young or old, American or Indian, rich or poor. These are bodily designations. These are the things that keep us apart from each other, aren't they? These are the things that wars are fought for. Let us free our consciousness from these designations. The only way we are going to actually be able to live together very peacefully and intimately is if we realize the beautiful thing in one another. That thing which makes us all equal, that thing which makes us equal with the plants, the trees, the animals, and everything else. And that is consciousness. This is the warm invitation in Krishna consciousness that you realize that beautiful nature of yourself as a spirit. Prabhupada's mission is to help us realize this. Yes, but how does he do that? I asked. There are lots of different ways to achieve spiritual perfection, depending on the time and place, he said. But the easiest and the most powerful way, right now in the age we are living in, it's called the age of Kali, and it is the winter season in the cycle of ages, is to chant the names of God. As you just saw us doing, we chant the names Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Yes. So the discussion between Vishnujan and Brian is developing more spiritual knowledge. Brian understand that he is not the body. Body is simply a vehicle, and consciousness, which is actually soul, is eternal, and that is our actually the real identity. So this discussion is going on between Brian and Vishnujan, and Vishnujan mentions another important thing, that although there are many spiritual paths, but in this particular time and age, the most fruitful and the most potent spiritual path is to chant the holy names of the Lord. So Brian is now getting introduced to the process of chanting Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu, please continue.
Yes, Prabhu. Krishna and Rama, we do it together, congregationally, and on our own as a meditation practice every day. Because Krishna is absolute, everything about him is also absolute. You as a person are different by your name, Brian, but Krishna's name is not different from him. Therefore, we chant Hare Krishna. We are connecting directly to the divine. Chanting enables us to reawaken our spiritual identity. If you would like to get out of this ocean of birth and death, the ocean of old age and disease, and enter into our real atmosphere, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, all you need is to do is chant and to dance, to feast. You don't have to necessarily join our religion, shave your head, or put on robes like I wear. It's not about that. It's about our giving your love to the absolute and all living beings. Can your spiritual master be a spiritual master too? Can I be this disciple like you? I asked. It wasn't long before I was. Within a year, I was an initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada and was following his examples by dedicating my life to reawakening my true spiritual nature. And so my new life began. My life as a disciple of my spiritual master and as a devotee of Krishna. The day when I met Prabhupada's disciples at Ann Arbor was the day I started the spiritual journey that continues today, 50 years later. I had forgotten the short exchange I had with Craig after he attended the Chariot Festival in San Francisco. But 10 years after meeting Vishnujana Swami, I went to visit my brother in California, where I went through some of the possessions I had left with her when I went to Europe. When I picked up my Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, a tiny piece of yellowed newspaper fell out from the cover. There, written in Craig's handwriting, was Srila Prabhupada's name.
So all this discussion that is between Brian and Vishnujan is very encouraging, very enlivening, very enlightening to Brian. He is very much convinced of the process, and so convinced that he decides to become the disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And then there's a mention in the chapter that later on, when he went back to his mother's place 10 years later, after becoming disciple, he again went to his possessions and found that album where he had kept that piece of newspaper, and he saw the name that was written on that newspaper was Srila Prabhupada's name. So, a little very interesting event. Now we come to the last page of this chapter, page number 18. Yeah.
Yes. If I could show you all that has happened since then, you would see many images of singing the holy names and dancing with unbridled joy. You had seen, you would see images of feasts and festivals, of travels in far distant lands, and of illuminating discourses too numerous to capture or explain adequately. Suffice to say that the day I met devotees of Krishna, I started home again, beyond the dualities of birth and death, to the shelter of the eternal realm, a shelter that I try to share with others, including you, through the pages of this book. Learn from, sorry.
Yeah, Prabhu, please continue.
Yeah, learn from the wise with submission, inquiry, and the service. The self-realized souls who have seen the truth will give you knowledge. Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 4.34.
So now Gurudev, or I would say Brian, is concluding the chapter. He's saying that this is how I got this life, life of eternity, where I came in contact with my Guru. So you can see Srila Gurudev has written this chapter, and then later on, while concluding, he's saying that what he's been doing for last 50 years, ever since he came in contact with the devotees of the Lord and took initiation from Srila Prabhupada, he's saying that I'm doing all organized festivals, feasts in different lands, far lands, and giving discourses to many, and share my good fortune, share the knowledge that I have received from my Guru with others. And then he concludes by writing this verse from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is Tad Vidhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya Updekshanti Te Jnanam Jnaninas Tattvadarshina. So this is 434 from Bhagavad Gita. Learn from the wise with submission, inquiry, and service. The self-realized soul who have seen the truth will give you knowledge. So the very first chapter of this book, which Srila Gurudev has written, actually starts by glorification of his own spiritual master, his own Guru. A very apt chapter at the beginning of the book, because at the beginning of any endeavor that we do, we actually glorify our Guru. So Srila Gurudev has chosen one of those chapters from his diaries, which is actually glorifying his spiritual master. And very nicely, poetically, with brilliant authorship, he is explaining this first chapter, how actually he came to Krishna Bhakti. So I hope this light reading of Gurudev's diary chapter or this book would have also enlightened you, would also have entertained you spiritually, nourished your soul, nourished yourself. So now what we will do is we will do a little discussion. So you have all read the chapter, and while reading the chapter, maybe there are several thoughts that might have crossed across your mind. Now you may like to raise your hands if you like to share some of your realizations, some of your thoughts, and we can give you opportunity to speak a little bit one by one. So maybe if somebody wants to say something, any feedback on this particular session that we have did, this book reading, do you like it? Do you think we should continue to do it in the future by taking some small breaks? That also gives me the opportunity to develop some programs like quizzes, etc. But certainly would like to hear your feedback. So over to you. Anyone would like to share your realization? Thank you very much. All glory to Srila Gurudev. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Oh yes, Ishwar Prabhu, yes please.
It's really very interesting and a different kind of experience. Very illuminating, and as usual you have been really very good at explaining things. Besides what our colleagues have read very devotionally and very reverentially. So I am really very happy about this topic which you have started just now.
Okay.
So just feeling great. I just want to know what happened to his family life once he came into Krishna conscious movement. So I think these details are available later on, but if you have any idea about what happened to his wife who was studying there in the university and his coming into Krishna conscious, did it make them their life simple, difficult, or whatever you know about it? I
Yeah.
would like to know
So
because the
Gurudev's
subject
wife,
is
Gurudev's
yeah,
wife is still living. Her name is Kripa Mai Dasi. So she also took initiation from Srila Prabhupada, but now they are not living as a married couple because Gurudev has taken sannyas. From that marriage, they also have one son. His name is Gaur Shakti Das. And Gaur Shakti Prabhu, uh, uh, many times he visits Srila Gurudev while he's in Vrindavan, and he associates with his father and so on. So that connection with the son is still there in that sense. But ideally, Gurudev has already taken sannyas. So uh, that connection is like this, as he is connecting with all other his disciples, like that he's connecting with his son also. So the family is still there. Mataji also is still there. So that's the answer I know. I don't know a lot of detail about it, but I can try to inquire about it with some of my God brothers. But that is how it is. And thank you very much for a good feedback. So probably we can continue to do this in future also, off and on. And in case you want to purchase this book, this is available on Amazon. I think the cost is very pocket friendly, like 250 rupees or 260 rupees. So you can order it. Amazon can send it to you within 2-3 days, and yourself you
yes.
can relish the experiences by Srila Gurudev. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very
Okay. So any more realizations, any more thoughts? Most welcome. It's your turn. That will really enlighten others also, encourage others also. If you like to say something.
Hare Krishna,
Prabhuji,
Prabhuji.
Yeah. So we go by Jayamala Mataji, then with Manish Prabhu. Yeah.
Thank you so much for today's very insightful reading. Definitely, we should continue with such readings more often, Prabhu. My realizations are we see that Gurudev, at a very young age, he has a very questioning and sensitive mind. Which is quite uncommon, which gives a hint of his spiritual bent of mind. He questions about the suffering and about is there any happiness in this world from a very young age, which is quite uncommon for such an age. Is what I felt. The second is we can see the divine intervention where he is saved from so many life-threatening events, be it meningitis or the sharp coral reef or the marine corpse where all his friends were killed, but by a stroke of luck, he was saved. So we can see the divine hand of Lord in all the turn of events. And the third realization is when his friend Craig talks to him about Srila Prabhupada, and Gurudev is not very enthusiastic about it. So it kind of is has a similarity with Srila Prabhupada's own life, where in Prabhupada Leelamrit we read that when Srila Prabhupada's friend asks him to come and meet his future spiritual master, that is His Holiness Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And Prabhupada says, no, I am not interested. I have seen enough of these gurus. So the reason is also same. Here, Gurudev also has seen a lot of very materialistic gurus, and he's quite fed up with it. And even Srila Prabhupada, we see that it was the same. And
Exactly.
the friend even says that he will be your guru, and which is something which came true in the later events, as we see. And the last realization is as it is said, Prabhu, that we are in Krishna conscious because of the mercy of devotees only. So here also we see that Gurudev got introduced and he got guided by His Grace Vishnu Jana Prabhu, who very nicely talks to him about the philosophy and makes him very interested. And because of which Gurudev finally he meets Srila Prabhupada, and it's been a wonderful journey. As he said, it's been 50 years now. He has been such a great Gurudev, and he has inspired so many of devotees to come into Krishna consciousness. So
Very
thank
nice.
you, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Very nicely put. All the realizations, very beautifully put. Thanks for sharing. Indeed. Yes. Any more? Yeah, Manish Prabhu was going to speak.
No,
Manish.
I think few questions already Mataji has covered, like what was his age when he was involved in all these things and when he took all this initiation and all. But the good part I really like that in all these circumstances which we face, which we suffer, who is really going to protect us? So the question which was continuously he was trying to understand that if something happens, who is with us? And now I really realize it's only Krishna, nobody else, the absolute. And that really is what I also feel when I just started my journey maybe 5 years back with you all devotees. And I really feel this is the only ultimate goal for all of us. And that is what I have been experiencing from last 5 years. And I really see a uh, very forward path whenever I see. If I lose something, definitely I see that God has created something new for me. And this is what is happening. And I'm really sensing that, I'm really feeling that. And in all circumstances, I am able to get out of that. And I still the peace or happiness, like distress or happiness, whatever is there, I can still overcome it now with all these teachings. And I really feel blessed and happy that I am associated with all you devotees and learning all this. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your personal realization. Very nice. Okay. So any other anyone any more thoughts? Okay, so maybe I'll share a couple of thoughts from my side. Well, one thing is, I hope you would have experienced the power of storytelling. So this is a very simple chapter. There is nothing very complicated as far as the philosophy is concerned. And it also reminds me of this discussion between Narad Muni and Vyasdev. So you all are reading Srimad Bhagavatam. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasdev is despondent, and ultimately Narad Muni comes to him to give him some knowledge that you should write Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the reason of your despondency. And then, in order to substantiate his point, Narad Muni explains his own story, his own life story, that he was a son of a maid servant, and their life was very, very difficult, very terrible. And then how devotees of the Lord, Bhaktivedantas, came in his life. And then by associating with the Bhaktivedantas, he became very much inspired to take on devotional service. And when he took devotional service, he was very, very happy, very, very joyful. So Narad Muni is explaining to Vyasdev in his own story, using his own story. And the similar way we see that how Srila Gurudev, Indradyumna Maharaj, is actually relating to all of us by narrating his own story. And the story is very similar. He also had a life which was full of troubles. And then in that life, when the devotees came, he felt that the devotees actually brought a lot of joy, a lot of clarity, how to lead a life, how to live a life, and so on in future. And that's how he starts to explain in the later part of the book. So very similar to the story of Narad Muni and Vyasdev, where Narad Muni is inspiring Vyasdev by telling his own story. So very similar style. So we can also, when we go out for preaching, we can also narrate our own story to people, because stories are very powerful. stories are talking about experiences. They are not talking about philosophies. And we have all gone through those experiences, and that experience that we have already had, when we share it with others, that inspires them also to have that kind of experience. So this is one event that I would like to quote with this diary chapter. Another second event which I would like to quote, where I find a lot of similarity, is the story of Buddha, story of Siddhartha. So if you recall that in that story, or in the life of Siddhartha, his father did not want that Siddhartha should come in contact with the outside world. But somehow one day when Siddhartha goes out to the outside world, he sees old age, he sees death, he sees disease, like that. And that gives him the kind of questions, why there is so much suffering. Very similar to what Gurudev has been feeling in his childhood. Why there is so much suffering? Is there any way out from this? Is there anyone to help us? Can we do something about it? And so on. So you can see a very spiritual bent of mind, which speaks that our Gurudev probably is not a very ordinary person. He is maybe having his spiritual journey continuing from the previous lives. He's already a Siddha, he's already an advanced soul, and now because of some arrangement of the Lord, he's there in this world. And in this world, the events have happened so in such a manner that he comes into Krishna consciousness, and then now he's playing a role of a guru, guiding all of us in a very nice way to continue to move and progress towards Krishna. So with these two events, I would like to share my thoughts. I hope those were useful. And thank you very much to all of you who had shared with me very good realization. I would also like to ask Sunita Prakash Mataji, how was your experience with this chapter? She is joining us for the first time. She is also belonging to Bangalore. Sunita ji, would you like to say something? You need to unmute yourself in case you are hearing us. Okay, never mind. Maybe she may not be able to hear us. Maybe she's busy somewhere. But with that, I would like to conclude the session today. Thank you very much. In the future, once again, we will organize it when the time is there and have the opportunity to do so. So thanks a lot. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Shubha Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Vinayji. Yes.
Prabhu, I was about to tell. It means I have also learned a lot, Prabhu, by the passages and tried to inculcate some of them. But once I have seen that, I had sent you that, what you call, that authentication, no, Prabhu, what I say in the, I say every day. By that saying, naturally, certain things which are not, as you say for tongue eating or some, say some anarthas, whatever maybe you're telling. So there's a reducing now. I mean, our that inculcation is coming. But as we meditate more on that, think of that, we want only cleansing. We don't want other things and why other things. So that is happening.
Okay.
So
very nice.
Is a good thing. Yeah, that is a good thing. So more we involve our mind and this thing, I'll always say, I also pray while chanting, let my thought, mind or intelligence should be always on the lotus feet or the forum of the Lord. So that makes me always concentrate on Lord and His glories.
Okay.
And
very nice, Prabhuji. Thank you.
As you told, Prabhu, as you told, no, whatever circumstances we are in distress, Lord at the end also He tries to come and help us. Maybe at the end of that particular whatever way you are suffering, that He shows some way that we are, as He has told, O Slokam Mahena Prabhu, that He protects what you have.